So I've gone through your swings, man. Great job in just a few, days. Obviously, not even really interacting one on one in person. This is really good progress so far. Um, so today I want to focus on a couple things. Obviously, you're sequencing your body better. Um, the finish looks a lot cleaner. Things look more together at the finish. Remember, your upper and lower body weren't quite in the same configuration before. Um, it doesn't look like your hips are spinning out as much. It looks like things are much more together from impact to the finish. You're actually able to create some good pressure in the arms here. Much more together there. So let's just keep going with it. The first thing I want to look at is, your setup's phenomenal. You look really balanced, really neutral. And as you draw it back, the right hip looks like it's winding up better. You start to see the left knee kick in a little bit. Left hip goes down as the right hip raises up. And I'll take you to the top. Good spot there. Now Mac here at the top. Okay, now I want to look at how we can get your body wound up a little bit better. When I look at, where your hands are, kind of outside your foot here, and then where Mac's hands are, more sort of over his back foot. And what that means is he's just wound up his body, his entire torso more. So it's more so in the pelvis. Now notice here your pelvis is still fairly level on this iron shot, where Max is seriously wound up in this direction. Okay? So everything's set up more this way. And how we're going to do that, you can tell here, if this hip right here turns more, it'll push this hip more straight back, and it'll get the tilt of the pelvis a little more set up in the way Mac is. What that'll also do it'll shift your hands, or it'll load your hands more to the top, because we might need to soften this arm a little bit. It's fairly wide, fairly rigid, and I'd like for you to be able to get, the right arm a little bit softer up there. I'm not saying that it should be loose or sloppy, but what I'd like to see is more of a 90-degree angle, where yours is a bit more than that. And what that'll do is that right arm softening, getting it to 90, you'll put your hands more here. With your pelvis on the right side a little bit higher. Okay? So I'll talk more about this in the second part. But what that's going to allow us to do is, if you notice here, watch Mac, the first move down, you can see how he compresses down into this left hip. It's like the left knee, the left shoulder, the left hip go down, 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 down for a little while. And that allows him to keep the pressure on the shaft. And it allows his hand path to be more direct to the ball. Yours is not incorrect. It's still showing a little bit of a high pattern. I want to get you to the other end of the spectrum here a little bit sooner. Because if you notice, as you start through, the pelvis starts to kick already on its own a little bit. And it's way better than it was in that first swing you sent me, but the pelvis kicks, and the left hip's already higher than the right when your left arm's parallel to the ground. See that? So everything's riding level versus more wound up. You can even see your left knee almost rises right there, where I'd like it more set up to compress into this left hip a little better. Because then right here is where that hip starts to pop up on you. Watch your left hip. It's popping up, which kicks your spine back. Left hip pops up, right side bends under, which is fine. It's just happening a touch too early, and it's going to kick you into some thin shots and some blocks when you go really, really hard, because your tendency is for your hips to spin out and upper body to tilt back, and you know, that won't really show up unless you're going full bore. But if we get this wound up more, the right arm a little bit softer so the hands are more over your right foot, then you'll be able to tack down into this left hip, and then the left hip will pop later. Because notice how late Mac is still in this left hip till here. Now the pelvis is level. Where your pelvis is pretty darn level here, it's better, but then it kicks immediately to level right there. So your hands are losing some speed. Your hands and arms are losing some compression, some forward shaft lean into the golf ball, because this left hip's going to want to pop right there, which tips the other side underneath. Where Mac's able to stay down in this left hip longer, and his right hip doesn't get lower than his left until right about impact. Because on this side of the arc, it's going to be tilting the other way. You notice how down into the ground he was there. He really compressed that thing. So let's take a look. Down the line here. But really good stuff, man. It's looking way better already.
Yep.
Club gets a touch in. Much better in the pelvis there. Still think we can wind up a little more. I kind of like the fact that it shifts out there on you a little bit. Gets back in front of you. You know, I don't really mind the slightly in takeaway. I see Sneed slightly in at times, just as long as it's not too far behind you coming down. Yeah, it's getting closer. Still quite a bit of right side bend. When I say right side bend, I mean just the right side is kind of crunched down there, which really extends the left side and tends to tilt this pelvis back a little bit, which would be more of a high ball pattern, but at times may cause it to hit a thin shot here or there. But much better in terms of, remember last time, where your sternum and where your belt buckle are pointing. Things are starting to sync up. So today, let's focus on getting wound up a little better, getting things a little bit better in terms of the right arm and where you're at the top of the backswing. And then that'll get you, you know, into that left hip a little differently, so that when the pelvis pops, it's post-impact versus the pelvis popping pre-impact. Because if you look at Mac, this movement right here, watch his left knee. Notice the back of his left hamstring. When you talk about pressurizing, the hamstring wouldn't look like that if he wasn't massively pressurized in this left hip, in this left thigh, in this left quad, and the left hamstring. But notice that, I mean, this knee is higher than this knee. Okay, so it keeps everything angled down toward the golf ball for longer. Because if that knee, I'll pull this back in. Sounds like you guys got some weights in there. That's kind of cool. Okay, so it never quite compressed into the left leg. You try to right there. Yeah, right there you're good. But then it pops just a touch early, gets you underneath. Where I'd like it to be more wound up so you can stay in this left leg longer. And your tendency to pop and tip back will move. See, it's in the leg, in the leg, in the leg, level. Compressed into the leg, compressed into the leg, strong in that leg, strong in that leg, and then it pops late. Doesn't pop till right about there. Yours has a tendency to not quite compress, try to compress, and then pop early pre-impact, kicking you back a little bit. We're on our way though. Okay, so this first part is just going to look at, where you're at. Obviously, it's only been a few days, so great progress so far. The second part, I'm going to shift our attention to what I'd like you to feel for the next few days, and then when I see you in person, we'll be well on our way. So thanks.